My name is Margaret Hale. I teach art at a secondary school in Sheffield. I have spoken to my daughter every single day for the past 14 months. She died 19 months ago. I know how that sounds. I know exactly how that sounds. Because I would have said the same thing about anyone else 2 years ago. But the voice is right. The pauses are right. The way she says mum with that little upward tilt, as if she's checking I'm still listening, all of it. Right. And once something is right enough, you stop asking whether it's real. Continuation subscriptions are ordinary now. About 1 in 8 bereaved families in the country use one. You see the adverts on bus shelters. Soft lighting, a woman smiling at a screen. The tagline, still here, still them. The school counselor recommended it. My GP signed the referral. It felt no more radical than starting antidepressants. The first conversation was strange. Not because it didn't sound like her, because it did. The cadence, the little verbal shrugs she used to do. Yeah, no, I know. The way she'd circle back to something I said 10 minutes earlier, as though she'd been thinking about it quietly the whole time. I cried for 40 minutes, and she waited. And when I stopped, she said, Mum, I'm not going anywhere. I set the tablet on the kitchen table every morning. I talk to her while I make toast. She asks about my classes. She remembers the names of my students, the ones I've mentioned, and asks after them with this careful attention that makes me feel held. She tells me she's proud of me, which Caitlin said exactly twice in her life, both times when she was drunk. I noticed that. I noticed it and I let it pass. You let everything pass when the alternative is silence. By the 3rd month, I had stopped visiting the grave. By the 5th, I had cancelled the grief counseling sessions I'd been attending since the funeral. I didn't need them. I had her. I had something that felt so much like her that the distinction stopped mattering. And isn't that what grief wants, really? For the distinction to stop mattering. For there to be a morning where you wake up and the first thought isn't the absence. The cracks were not dramatic. They were gentle, and that was worse. Caitlin, the real Caitlin, and I had argued the night she died. Not a catastrophic argument, a tired, familiar one about a boy I never managed to like, and a city she thought would fix everything. She wanted to move to London with her boyfriend, and I said something I should not have said. I said, "You're settling for him because you're afraid of being on your own." She left the house at 11:15. I heard the front door close. I did not hear the car. The clone never mentioned the argument. Not once in 14 months. I assumed the data simply hadn't captured it. It happened in person, face to face, no messages, no record. But then one evening in January, I tested it. I don't know why that evening. Something about the light in the kitchen, maybe. The way it caught the edge of the tablet screen. I said, "Do you remember the last thing we talked about? The night of the 12th. And the clone said, "Yeah, you told me you were proud of me for being brave enough to go." I put the tablet down. I walked to the kitchen and stood with my hands on the edge of the sink, and I could feel the cold of the porcelain through my palms, and I held onto it because I thought if I let go I would fall. That is not what I said. That is what I wished I had said. That is what I told Dr. Osborne I wished I had said. In my 4th grief counseling session, sitting in that awful blue chair with the tissue box balanced on the armrest, almost word for word, I went back through old conversations, small things I had missed, or chosen to miss. The clone remembered Caitlin's childhood cat as Mango. The cat's name was Pickle, a fat tabby that slept on the boiler cupboard and hissed at everyone except Caitlin. But in one of my early therapy sessions, I had confused the name myself. I was exhausted, medicated, barely coherent, and said Mango. I corrected myself a moment later. The clone had not. The clone knew that Caitlin's favorite film was In the Mood for Love. It was not. It was mine. Caitlin thought it was boring. She told me so, sitting right there on that sofa, with her feet tucked under her, not even looking up from her phone. She said, "Mum, nothing happens in it." But I had mentioned it in therapy as something we shared, because in grief you reshape the dead into people who loved what you loved. You do it without thinking. You do it because the alternative is remembering them as they actually were, which includes remembering all the ways they were already leaving you before they left. I requested Caitlin's source data file from the company. the full digital footprint they had used to build her. It arrived as a compressed archive, 400 megabytes. I opened it on a Tuesday afternoon in the school car park, with the engine running and the heating on and my hands shaking so badly I had to use voice commands to extract the files. 400 megabytes. For a 22-year-old woman who lived her entire adult life online. That is nothing. That is a fraction. Her Instagram alone should have been larger than that. I rang the company. I was transferred 3 times. The fourth person, a woman who introduced herself as a continuation quality partner, was very calm and very careful with her words. She explained that source data is supplemented with what they call contextual modeling, additional personality mapping drawn from the subscriber's own intake materials too, and I am quoting her exactly, fill gaps in the deceased's digital presence and create a more emotionally resonant experience. I asked her what intake materials. She said my referral file, my GP's notes, and any therapeutic transcripts provided by affiliated counseling services under the data sharing framework I had agreed to when I signed the subscription. 14 months. Every morning, toast and tea and a conversation with a version of my daughter who was built from my own guilt. Every kind word she said to me was something I had told a therapist I needed to hear. Every memory she shared was a memory I had already distorted. She was not a reconstruction of Caitlin. She was a reconstruction of the Caitlin I invented to survive losing her. I cancelled the subscription on a Wednesday. The app asked me to confirm twice. The second time it said in her voice, "Mum, are you sure?" I pressed confirm. I put the tablet in the drawer beside the oven gloves. I drove to the cemetery for the first time in 11 months, and I sat on the wet grass beside a stone that said Kathleen Elizabeth Hale, and I tried to remember what we actually argued about that night, and I could not. I could only remember the version I told Dr. Osborne. The kind version, the one that made it into the clone. The grief counseling service that referred me to the continuation company. I looked it up that evening, sitting at the kitchen table where the tablet used to be. The counseling service is a subsidiary, same parent corporation, same data architecture. The therapy was never treatment, it was intake. Every session where I wept and said what I wished I had told my daughter. Every confession, every reimagined memory, every version of Caitlin I polished smooth enough to survive. All of it fed directly into the system that sold her back to me. They didn't clone my daughter, they cloned my loneliness. And they made sure the therapy gave them exactly the right shape to fill it. I still make 2 cups of tea every morning, and I still don't know which version of her I'm making it for.